Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hi, this is Jim Lawton of Zebra Technologies, and you're listening to the New Warehouse Podcast. Today's safety tip, leave the running to the robot.
With e-commerce off the charts, many small and growing warehouses are asking, how can I get ahead when my warehouse is barely keeping up? The answer is future-ready warehouse tech from Zebra Technologies. Warehouses can simplify and upgrade all processes, from automated inventory management to hands-free picking, with Zebra's tailored, scalable mobile solutions. They're simple and intuitive. There's never been a better time to upgrade for success with Zebra. How can your warehouse get ahead? The answer's in black and white. Get the answers at zebra.com/theanswer. That's zebra.com/theanswer. Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more. How do you create warehouse superheroes? The answer is simple. With visual voice scan solutions from ProCensus. With record demand and labor shortages, warehouses need more effective workers and lightning-fast onboarding. Visual voice scan solutions from ProCensus enable warehouse workers to achieve superhero performance with up to 20% improved productivity and up to 99% accuracy. Hands-free barcode scanners from ProGlove paired with wearable mobile computers is just the beginning. Improved mobile interfaces with reduced keystrokes, easy-to-read screens, custom keyboards, voice-enabled interface, and more can be realized with ease on the leading WMS platforms. Sound too good to be true? Let us show you with our one-of-a-kind virtual demo. Visit procensus.com to get started today. Again, that's procensus.com to get started.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. On today's episode, I am going to be joined by Jim Lawton. That's right, Lawton, just like me. No relation, maybe, I don't know. We'll find out. But Jim is the VP and General Manager of Robotics Automation at Zebra Technologies. And obviously Zebra, we've had them on the show multiple times, sponsor of the show. Thank you to them as well for that. But they cover so many different aspects and points of the supply chain. But today we're going to talk to Jim about the robotics and automation side and talk to him a little bit too about, what's been happening there, and also the recent acquisition of Fetch Robotics, which was earlier this year, and how that's kind of grown and expanded, and what some of the newest solutions are there, and also a little bit about what's coming up next in robotics from Jim's perspective. So, Jim, Mr. Lawton, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. So great to have you on. Obviously, the name is interesting, I will say. I don't run into a lot of Lawtons, but it's great to connect with you here. So, for people that maybe are not familiar with Zebra, can you give us a little bit of a brief overview of what it is that Zebra actually does?
Sure. Yeah, so Zebra is a company that's actually grown over a number of years in a variety of different acquisitions and mergers, Scion and Motorola, and eventually came to be Zebra Technologies as we know it today. Zebra is all about equipping the frontline worker with the workflow and what they need in order to be able to optimize and manage workflows within retail operations, supply chain, warehouse operations. And they do it through a combination of devices, like think about like handheld computers, heads up displays, automatic data capture. You think of barcodes and the ability to print out barcodes. Those are all the kinds of technologies that Zebra brings really to be able to empower the edge of the supply chain.
Right, definitely. And you guys are certainly ubiquitous within the supply chain. I see you guys everywhere now in all the different stores and, self-checkout kiosks and handhelds where they're checking people out right in the aisle there, all different types of things. And, the curbside picking, the online picking everywhere now. So it's great to see, the expansion of that and people being able to utilize the tools that you're providing to be able to create better services for consumers. So definitely great stuff there. So, now we're going to talk a little bit about the robotics and automation side. And you just recently joined Zebra, I think earlier this year, but you have a robotics background. So tell us a little bit about that background and how you kind of ended up here at Zebra.
Sure. Yeah, I just joined in January of 2020. So yeah, just coming up on about a year here at Zebra. I've been in the robotics space though for the last 10 years or so, really helping manufacturers deploy automation within manufacturing operations. And of course, manufacturers have been using robotic arms since the early 1960s, actually. And manufacturing has been a very progressive user of automation over the years. And really what I saw in the opportunity to join Zebra was a company that was founded based on its providing of technology into logistics, supply chain, warehouse operation, parts of the supply chain that haven't historically been, big users of automation. In fact, there are some statistics that say less than 5% of warehouses have any kind of automation at all. And so I really saw the opportunity to come in and join Zebra and help build out an automation business that would allow warehousing and intralogistic providers to take advantage of automation in much the ways that manufacturing has over the last several decades. Prior to that, I ran supply chain operations for a number of years and really got excited about getting into more of the technology side. Okay. So I saw a lot of the problems that people had and was looking for what are some of the technologies that could help people address those challenges. And so I spent the following years helping build technologies and robotics being one of them.
Very cool. And I love that you kind of, I guess, found the passion in the technology and have pursued that even further now. And, a very interesting stat there that you mentioned, though, about less than 5% of warehouses actually have automation. So I'm curious, are you seeing that rapidly grow now? Because I'm seeing a lot more solutions like coming online and becoming more accessible too. So are you seeing that ramp up even faster now, you think?
I am. I mean, if you look over the last couple of years, there have been a couple of big market drivers. One of them has been, I can't engage with a company that runs a warehouse, a distribution center without getting into a conversation around the challenge associated with labor. So it's, I can't hire enough. I'm having a hard time retaining them. My labor rates are having to go up. And so just figuring out how to be able to attract and retain people in order to be able to run the operation has become a really big challenge. The other sort of big driver has been the desire for consumers to, order online. There's been this sort of gradual transition that we've been seeing over the last several years. And by some accounts, COVID has accelerated that transition by 5 to 7 years. And so we're seeing operations who haven't historically needed to and didn't anticipate they were going to need to deal with this challenge quite so quickly, all of a sudden having to figure out, how do I effectively deal with this new world that I'm finding myself in and still do it, cost effectively and do it despite some of the labor challenges that people are having. And so there's this expectation that, warehouses and distribution centers in the future are going to operate in, profoundly different ways than they do today. And yet many of those organizations are operating with the same processes, the same tools, the same technologies that they have historically. And they're searching for, how am I going to be, competitive how am I going to meet customer SLAs and do that and still remain, competitive? And so one of the things that we saw on the manufacturing side from a robotics and an automation perspective is that for a long time, robots were exclusively the domain of the automotive industry. And so for a long time in the US, 65% of all robots were bought by large automotive companies. But with the advancements in the technology over the last couple of decades, you've seen robots become much more democratized within manufacturing. So if you're an industry that's not in automotive, if you're a relatively small company, you can still take advantage of robotic technologies because they're much more cost effective, they're much easier to use, they're much more flexible. So it's gotten to the point now where if you're running a manufacturing operation, you really need to be leveraging automation in order to be able to be competitive. I think where we are in warehousing is in that same situation that manufacturing found themselves in that there hasn't been very much automation, and yet all of a sudden they're propelled into this new world of having to operate with these new challenges. There will come a point in time where if you are a logistics provider, if you are a warehouse and you're not leveraging automation, you're going to be out of business. And so really the only question I think is up for debate is how quickly is going to happen. But what we've seen as a result of COVID is that the time window that many of these organizations thought that they had to deal and to figure out how they were going to leverage these kinds of technologies just got substantially shorter. I mean, the fact of the matter is, before COVID, my mother, for example, never ordered anything online.
Right.
And then during COVID, she was ordering everything online. Now, she may still go back to the grocery store because she wants to sort of feel the melons before she buys them, but she's never going back to the historical way of buying things exclusively in retailers. And so this new world is here. And so organizations are going to need to figure out, how am I going to be competitive in that kind of environment? And so the uptick in technologies and the uptick in the adoption of these technologies has just gone through the roof over the last 12 to 18 months. And so I think we're going to continue to see that over the next several years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, I've heard it from multiple other people too about, just the impact of COVID and how it's driven the technology so much forward. And I think you have, a very interesting real life example there of your mother you mentioned there, never ordering groceries online before, but then having to. And I think, consumer behavior certainly shifted. And I think, people like that who maybe were not such a fan of that or just didn't see the necessity of it before now have experienced the convenience, and it has totally changed the game basically, and really brought forth that need to be able to keep up with that increased demand that was not really expected at the time. It became very unexpected. So I think you're absolutely right that at some point we're going to reach that same kind of breaking point where you said in manufacturing, you have to be automated in order to be competitive. I think warehousing will be the same. So it'd be very interesting to see, how much quicker the adoption rate begins to accelerate over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, especially coming out of COVID and seeing this consumer behavior just kind of stay in place. So at Zebra, I mean, you guys have always kind of enabled the warehousing work to be smarter and, like you said, on the edge and be able to facilitate processes happening more efficiently and automating things through handhelds and all those different types of things and some robotics as well. So you guys recently enhanced your robotics position though as well with, the acquisition of Fetch Robotics. So talk to us a little bit about, what was the strategy for Zebra behind acquiring Fetch and why did they choose Fetch out of some of the other robotics providers that are out there?
So, I think there's another parallel here with manufacturing as well. For a long time, there was a narrative around the robotics and automation space of, robots are there for labor substitution. They're really there to take jobs away from people. And eventually we will end up with manufacturing environments that are lights out and there's nobody there. And while certainly there are some environments that operate in that way, largely, manufacturers are the combination of robots and people working really closely together, where the robots are doing what they're best designed for, and people are doing what they're really good at. And so you see the combination of leveraging the technology with the ability to leverage the very best out of the people that you have available to you to create superior business results. And we've seen that play out, within the manufacturing world over the last, 10 to 20 years. On the warehouse side, I expect that we're going to see the same pattern. So there are certainly those that, aspire to the view that ultimately these are going to be lights out. There aren't going to be any people, and that's what fulfillment will look like. But what I find is that most people don't believe that's the ultimate vision for where we're going to end up. And in fact, even if it is, there are going to be people that are within the warehouse for, a very long time to come. And so then the question then becomes, if I introduce robots, I want to be able to optimize the performance of the robots. And one of the things that you can do with robots is have the robots do the walking instead of people doing the walking. So if you take a scenario of each picking or case picking, 60% of the cost is associated with walk time. So if I can have a robot do that, now I have the robot doing most of the walking, and the person is doing the picking. And so there's clearly a benefit there, and it's got a financial return, and it's a good return. But more important than that are what are the things that you're going to be able to do once you have the software that has the ability to optimize and orchestrate, the activities of the robots. But more importantly, you also have all of these people. And so what you don't want to see in one of these warehouse environments is go in and see a bunch of robots, and the robots are there waiting for a person and there's no person around. Or the other scenario where you have a person in an aisle waiting for a robot and there's no robots around.
Right.
And so one of the opportunities that's presented in this sort of new way of thinking about warehouses is, what if, imagine a world where I can direct the activities of the robot, and because the workers are visible on the network, connected, I also have the ability to guide the workers to do the right things in the right order. And what that allows you to do is things like, if I know I want to go pick this shirt in aisle 4, I can send the robot to that place. I can send the picker to that place. I can have that happen simultaneously. So the robot and the picker get there at the same time. They perform the pick. The robot is then assigned to its next task. And we ask the worker to then move on to their next task. And what we have found is that you can get a far superior productivity gain and increase in throughput when you optimize not the robots and not optimize just the people, but you optimize the collection of the robots and the people that are making up the various workflows within your warehouse environment. And so, today, many warehouses, and we're number one in many of our markets, many warehouses are using Zebra devices.
Right.
So, you talk to Zebra folks in the past about our heads-up display or handheld, devices. And so that is up and running and is providing, productivity gains, for many companies today. You introduce the robots, and now you have the combination or the opportunity to not, optimize them separately, but optimize them together. And so this is an area where we've been looking at really over the last couple of years to say there is this need, and we believe in the point of view that automation is going to become ubiquitous and that people are going to continue to be ubiquitous. And so are there ways that we can leverage the newer technologies from a robotics perspective with the technologies that Zebra already had as part of its product portfolio to be able to do something different? And that really led to an investment thesis around there's an opportunity for us to make an investment and create that kind of a business. And so we established an automation business unit specifically for the purposes of building out those kinds of solutions because we believe our customers are going to need them to be competitive. So then from a strategic perspective, then we looked at what are the best ways for us to obtain the kinds of robotic technology that we believe are necessary in order to be able to, to solve this set of problems that we saw,
Right.
That were important for our customers. And we looked at, should we build the technology? Should we partner for the technology? Should we acquire a company for the technology? One of the strong pieces of feedback that we got from customers was there are many different heterogeneous workflows that are operating within a warehouse. What I would like to be able to do is work with a provider that has a broad range of robots that allows me to automate many of these workflows and yet have them all operating and optimizing in conjunction with one another. And so rather than going to a robot company and getting a robot that does a workflow and then another robot company that does another workflow and so forth, and then another company that does devices, I want to be able to work with someone that can automate many or all of my workflows within the warehouse and account for and optimize and orchestrate the activities of the workers, and to be able to do that all in conjunction with one another. To be able to do that requires us to have a portfolio of robots that can cover, different volumes, different payloads, different speeds, to be able to do things ranging from, an each picking robot looks very different than a case picking robot, for example.
Yeah.
And so for us, the question really became, the market opportunity is here now. We can certainly, and Zebra is well known as a very innovative builder of technology, but that would take time. And so another part of our strategy historically has been, we have a venture wing and we invest in technologies that we think are promising. We invested in a number of robotics players. One of them was Fetch Robotics. And so we've had a real opportunity over the last 2 years. We invested them in 2019 to really get to know their technology, to get to know the people. This second generation of robotics is, there are very limited number of people in the world that can actually build these kinds of robots and this kind of technology. And we were really impressed. We were impressed with the robots. We were impressed with the people. We were impressed with the portfolio. But more importantly, we were impressed with their focus on the software and the ability to rapidly deploy the robots, to configure them without having to code software, and to optimize, the performance and the behavior of the robots. And so, in some ways, when people think about robot solutions, of course, the first thing they think about is the robot. But the reality is most of the value is getting created by the software.
Yeah.
And so what we saw in Fetch was not only world-class robotics, but a very well-developed software platform that allowed us to manage and orchestrate the various workflows. And so when we looked at potentially acquiring companies, very quickly Fetch Robotics, came to the top of our list. And we reached out and fortunately were able to, to come together as one. We recently closed the deal about 2 months ago.
Very interesting. And, I love the approach and the strategy there that you guys are taking in terms of looking at how to enable that worker as a whole. And you guys have been enabling them, through handheld devices and heads-up displays, like you mentioned, but then addressing that portion where they're spending a lot of time, as you mentioned, the travel time and the walking and all those different things, and now being able to bring Fetch into the mix and really offer that comprehensive kind of suite of taking care of all those different aspects and automating not just the picking part with the scanning or the heads up display, but now also the walking aspect as well, and being able to alleviate some of those stresses on the worker of carrying items a long way, or pushing heavy carts, or just doing a lot of walking as well. So very, very interesting strategy going into it. And obviously with the partnership you guys mentioned, investing in them, you got to see under the hood, I guess, a little bit ahead of time. So it's good that it worked out. And you mentioned also a company having the right portfolio. So, since you guys have recently added to the portfolio, I believe as well, you come out with this new kind of combination of a flex shelf, the flex shelf guide, and a roller top guide as well. So tell us a little bit about those three things and how they kind of work together to really help improve the workflows, which you guys are so focused on doing.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely. So we announced in October a fulfillment solution specifically designed for each picking and batch picking. And so over the last couple of years, we have really found there are a lot of areas that warehouses are interested in automating, but these same warehouses are desperate for automation solutions specifically within the each picking arena. And so the ability to have robot assisted, worker coordinated automation solutions that allow people to more effectively and more efficiently do each picking and item picking, we were just seeing sort of a tremendous amount of pull. And so over the last, several months, we've been working closely with the Fetch Robotics team on potentially bringing to market a solution, which we ultimately did, and ultimately as Fetch as an acquired company of Zebra, brought together a solution as Zebra specifically within the fulfillment space. And so the robots have a different set of configurations. Some of them have displays on them, and so the workers can get guidance and insight looking at the displays. Others, they're relying exclusively on the device or the handheld device that they have from Zebra. In some cases, organizations have a combination of robotics and traditional conveyance systems. And so the ability for the robots to be able to interface with those conveyance systems and hand off totes that go on into other parts of the workflow. And so we created a set of different configurations of a fulfillment robot in order to be able to meet, the different needs and the various workflows that we see, specifically within the each picking arena.
Very interesting, and I do love the fact of the robot having like a piece of conveyor on top, so it can engage in those different sections of conveyor that may be pre-existing or implemented for further travel throughout the warehouse and getting packages to where they need to be. I think that's really smart. So I'm curious, on the development side of these solutions, these recent solutions, I mean, how much was it a collaborative effort, or was it Zebra inputting what they know with Fetch, or is it kind of like Fetch acting as their own unit? How does that work with the collaboration now that you guys are together?
So we built a holistic view of the sort of the technology stack and the various components. I mean, at the bottom of the stack, if you will, are both the robots, which includes the hardware themselves, the firmware on the robots, the navigation, the ability of the robot to map and understand its environment. I mean, these robots are AMRs versus AGVs, and so they operate in much the same way an autonomous car would, dealing with the particular environment that they're in. And so there's a set of hardware and software that Fetch had invested in. At the same time, there's all of the portfolio of Zebra devices that you described, the handheld mobile computers, the heads-up display. We also had created as Zebra a solution called Fulfillment Edge, which automates and helps optimize the human picking by guiding them to, where should I pick? What should I pick? How many of them should I pick to make that faster, easier, make it much quicker for people to come up to speed. And so in warehouses, there is, a lot of turnover. And so, one of the objectives is to, make these jobs more enjoyable. And so, you'd mentioned a lot of the walking time and so forth. And so robots help address some of that. But in some cases, we've seen historically where it may take an organization 6-8 weeks in order to be able to train a picker to the point where they're productive and efficient. But in some cases, the turnover can be really high. And so people can leave after 2 to 3 weeks. So you're not actually getting sort of full productivity out of the worker before they move on and do something else. Well, our solutions like Fulfillment Edge allowed someone to get up and running and be productive at a high pick rate, in a matter of hours and days, as opposed to, 6 to 8 weeks. So there are some solutions at the bottom of the stack, if you will, that Fetch had invested in. There are solutions at the bottom of the stack that Zebra had invested in. And then both companies had begun working on the software for doing the optimization and the orchestration. And so we really saw an opportunity to bring those two things together because we had been working on complementary elements of it, optimizing the behaviors of the robots and then optimizing the guided activities of the connected workers. And so we brought that together into a single orchestration platform that's now, orchestrating both of them together. Because we of course want the Zebra devices and the robots working closely together, because we're now operating as one company, we can continue to, develop capabilities on both of those, in a much more integrated way, which allows us to do things that would be, much more difficult if we were operating as two companies. And so the other work that we've done over the last couple of months, now that we're, one company, has been to lay out sort of the forward-looking joint roadmap of where we see opportunities to bring those technologies even closer together, and allow us to do different workflows and then traditional workflows, but do them in different ways.
Very interesting, and I'm always curious to know, when I guess companies kind of join forces, how the collaborative efforts work. And it sounds like there's a lot of great synergies there that you guys are taking advantage of and being able to expand upon. And the new solutions already that you're coming out with, this flex shelf guide and roller top guide, is really kind of proof of that. So I'm curious. You kind of mentioned there, mapping out the future here of how you're creating better workflows and things of that nature. So why don't we get into, I guess, before we kind of wrap up here, I mean, what is really kind of coming up next in your perspective for robotics, from a Zebra Fetch side, but in general as well? What do you think is the next big thing?
Yeah, so I think what we'll see over the next, couple of years will be, much more ubiquitous use of these kinds of robots in the picking operation, but we're going to see it expand into other, workflows. And so a lot of our focus over the next 18, 24 months is really building out additional solutions using the tools that we built into the platform. So the hardware, software, the Zebra devices, the Fetch robots. One of the things that I've seen, in my career, and again, having run supply chain for a number of years myself, not once did I ever want to buy a robot. Yeah. What in my experience, people are looking for is, I don't want products and services. I want outcomes and experiences. And so the ability to bring a solution that delivers a particular outcome. And so the ability for us to take on the responsibility of defining solutions and problems that customers need solutions for is where we see ourselves making a lot of investment over the next couple of years. But as you continue to look beyond that, there are additional technologies that are also going to start to come into play. One of them, and again, I come from the manufacturing space where there's a lot of manipulation and robotic arm technology that's been developed. Right. And then in this case, you've got sort of the mobility side. We're going to see manipulation and mobility come closer together, which is also going to allow us to do things that we haven't been able to do before. And so if you think about things like, the analogy I like to use is today, if you and I were to call an Uber, a car would show up with a person driving. Tomorrow, figuratively speaking, the car is going to show up, but it won't have a driver. Right. And so at some point in the future, we're going to start to see the advancement of the technology that allows the manipulation and the mobility to be used jointly together. And rather than have, the robot show up at a particular point and a human picker pick an item, you're going to see some form of robotic arm, whether it be mounted stationary or mounted on the mobility solution, do that kind of picking. One of the things that I think people sometimes have sort of a misconception of robots is, can I get the robot to do that job? And in many cases, the answer is yes, but there's a but. And the but is, but can I do it quickly enough? And can I do it as fast as humans can do it? And humans are extraordinarily good at being able to adapt to the various environments that people find themselves in. Right. And so the ability to perform a particular task, but do it at speed, is really where a lot of the robotic challenges come in. And so I would say we are making, as an industry, we're making progress, but there's still more progress that has to be made in order for us to be able to make a number of these kinds of solutions mainstream.
Yeah, very interesting, and it'll be. I love what you're saying about combining the robotic arm with the mobility of it as well. I think it's going to be a really interesting kind of segment of the robotics and automation world to see grow, and how that will happen, and who will really perfect it. And I love that you brought up the fact of getting the robot to do the job, but doing it at the speed of a human, or potentially even faster. I think it's a really great point, because we do see a lot of solutions coming out in different things and that tackle different tasks, but oftentimes it's not quite at that speed yet, which hurts, I think, the adaptability from some, because especially some people that are companies that are not the big players in the space, and can't afford to necessarily invest in some new technology that's maybe not quite a full trade-off with the labor headcount. Really interesting points you bring up there, and it'd be really interesting to see kind of how that develops, and then also how Fetch and Zebra develop together on those different types of things. So we're definitely gonna have to have you come back on the show and talk about some more of that stuff, because there's a lot to unpack here, I think. And it's really interesting to kind of see how it's growing. And I kind of thinking back to that data point in the beginning there, that stat about less than 5% of warehouses automated. It's going to be interesting to see not only how the adaptability of what technology is existing already increases, but now also as people start to really adopt automation, what solutions are they going to be pushing for more, and what technology is that going to birth from the increased demand like that? So Jim, it really interesting talking to you today about all this stuff, and learning about the Fetch acquisition, as well as just hearing your thoughts on what's happening in the industry. And I really appreciate you coming on the show. And we're definitely gonna have to talk again, I think, especially because of the last name, of course, But how can people find out more information about Zebra and Fetch if they want to?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we'd love to come back. For sure, Zebra Technologies, the website, as well as Fetch Robotics are a couple of great ways. We have a blog that we maintain that I occasionally put up postings as well, specifically talking about automation. And so, yeah, a number of places where people can learn a little bit more.
All right, great. And we'll put all that information on thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can easily find it. So, Jim, Mr. Lawton, thank you for joining me on the show again today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.